Hey everyone, welcome to the Mob Mentality Podcast. We have a special guest with us today, Miss Jessica Spear, and she is an author. And we're going to talk all about her books today. The phone book. I love the one that is called BFF or not really, not really best friends. And then being able to talk about navigating friendships, healthy relationships, even from young children, teens, even into adulthood. So, welcome. I'm very excited to have you.
Oh, thanks for having me, Sasha. I'm so excited to be here with you.
This is going to be really fun. So, just give us a little bit of background. Like, where did this passion come from on being able to really help our youth and especially talking about friendships and how to have healthy relationships?
Yeah, yeah. Well, this passion was born when I had kids, believe it or not. I know that happens for a lot of
Okay.
parents. Is sometimes, we have this life-shifting moment where we have kids and all of a sudden things we didn't know were super important to us, just came out and we started to follow those curiosities. So I have a background in social sciences, but I didn't know that at midlife I'd be writing books for preteens and teens, how to navigate this social world in healthy ways. I didn't see that coming, but when I had young kids, I started to notice, they had some social struggles. And I also noticed what that did to me too. It brought out, some concerns and some fears and insecurities in me. So as a background in social sciences, I just dove in. I
Yeah.
dove into research on that. I started a friendship program in public schools to help connect kids. And that is what grew into my first book, which has got this crazy title, BFF or NRF, which stands for
Yes.
Not Really Friends. I made that up. NRF is Not Really Friends, A Girl's Guide to Happy Friendships. So that book was my first book that I released, and then I've been
Okay.
just at it ever since. I started, and my second book is about middle school, and that book is for all genders. And then my most recent book is about phones and owning cell phones and creating healthy habits and skills, for kids that have phones, because that's happening, younger and younger these days.
Yes. I think that, let's just even start there because
Sure.
I think that even me personally, because I work from my phone, and so my kids are constantly, I mean, as littles, seeing me on this thing that is constantly right next to me. And I even have mixed emotions myself about them seeing me always on my phone and them not really understanding. It's like, okay, mommy is working on her phone, not just sit there distracted and scrolling. So, like, how does that play into setting up our kids to want to constantly be on technology? What's safe? What's not safe? Like, where are those boundaries? I have a lot of questions
Yes,
around that. I'm getting your opinion.
oh, that's a great place to start because let's face it, technology is everywhere. We walk down the street and everybody's staring down at their phone. So this is what we
Yes.
are modeling to children. But I do think there's things that we can do at home as parents to try to help kids create healthy boundaries and skills with technology in their life. So one thing I also, do a lot of work on my phone. And so one thing I try to do as a parent is really, give my kids a commentary as I do this. Like, oh, I have to, pick up my phone because I'm going to check this and this. And then, so let them know exactly what I'm doing. And then they see me put it
Okay.
down and get back to, face-to-face conversations with them. So I'm just, as I'm doing things, this is works really well with younger kids. Oh, I'm going to check the weather to make sure that, the weather's looking good for our drive later today. Pick up my phone, do that, put my phone down, get back to my, conversation and engagement with them. So I think as parents, we can be, just sharing exactly what we're doing with our phones so they know that we're using tools or we're doing, daily life things, but then we're putting it down and we're reconnecting, and we're having conversations where we're looking at them
Yes.
in the face and we're smiling. Or, if they come to us, and say they're asking something, asking us a question, we're on our phone, I put my phone down and I connect with them. I look them right in the eye and I respond. So I think we can do little things like that that model every day that this is a tool that I'm using, for work and for life. But you are here in person with me and you are a priority and I want to connect with you and really make you feel heard and loved. So that's just a little tip, for parents that we do find ourselves pulled to our phones, but we can model that in a way that's showing our kids how to do that in their relationships too.
I think that's so important of we've lost a lot of that face-to-face connection, and even though, like, we're
Yeah.
utilizing technology in a beautiful way even right now to be able to connect from different parts of the nation, but it's like we have this connection, but still knowing that's like we're right here with each other, and something about that eye contact that seems to be lost a lot now.
Yes,
I think
yes.
that's friendship.
Yeah, so building on just those little face-to-face interactions and sharing with your kids what you're doing on your phone, I think it's also really helpful to have some some clear guidelines that run your household as far as tech goes, such as
Like,
there are no phones at the dinner table and maybe there's no phones in bedrooms. And so what are these things that we are making sure our family all complies with so that we can have some family time without technology. So that'll help kids, start to learn again some boundaries and some guidelines, as they get older and progress to the teen and the early young adult years. How can they make sure they keep technology in their life, but in a healthy way, so it doesn't feel like it's impeding their relationships and other activities
yeah.
that they also like to do.
How in the things, the research and your books and everything that from you writing, what role do you feel like now technology, like social media, has on being able to develop friendships for younger kids, teenagers,
Mhm.
even for adults?
It's a real mixed bag. So if we look at the research, we're going to find all sorts of findings. So I think even though phones have been out for a while and social media has been, really in full force since probably 2010, especially with teens, we it's a mixed bag. So in some ways, we find that that is helping kids that are marginalized really connect and find community. So there's some
Okay.
positives there. We're also finding some real negatives, especially with younger children and girls, and social media, that it's actually hurting their self-esteem, hurting their ability, to really develop relationships in person and face to face and some real authentic connection. So it's a mixed bag. What I see happening is a shift, and we're hearing it all across the news. The country's considering a TikTok ban. They were considering some
Right.
age limit for certain apps in certain states. So how I think of this, and this doesn't this is not great for parents right now, because I think this is the challenge of today's parenting age, is
Yes.
we are still in the very beginning phases of how to really make sure we're doing the best for our kids. So social media wasn't really designed for kids. It was created with a totally different intention in mind. But kids have really adopted this in a huge way. Um,
Mhm.
but the platforms themselves still are not really policing themselves for how to make sure that kids are protected, that the content they're being exposed to is safe, that they're being protected from predators, that there's some really strong safeguards in place for cyberbullying. They're not there yet. So we as a society are trying to figure out, okay, how can we do this better? We're not there yet. And I think of, so when cars were invented, 100 plus years ago, there were no seatbelts, and it took a lot of gyrations to actually get seatbelts in place, and we started with kids, so we started with, "Hey, can we at least buckle up the kids?" But
Right.
that took, almost a century to buckle up the kids, and I feel like we're almost in that place now with social media and kids, is we are starting to figure out, okay, how do we buckle this up so that the kids are safe on social media? We're not there yet. So that, I'm sure, is setting off alarm bells in some parents' heads right now. So
Yes.
my recommendation is, as much as possible, just push it back, as long as you can, but keeping the
Mhm.
well-being of your preteen in mind. So usually where this becomes a challenge is the preteen years and in middle school. So in middle school, a lot of kids are on social media. A lot aren't, and that creates a disconnect as far as communication channels, because social media becomes the main way that kids begin to communicate with each other. So
Yep.
that's a tough spot for parents to navigate. So what I recommend is, as much as you can, just push it back. When you do introduce a phone, have some real good rules in place, family tech agreement in place. Just go slowly. You don't have to open up Pandora's box to every app. Maybe they're starting with phone, and text and, maybe a few apps that you approve of, and start there and let them earn and, grow some responsibility there, have lots of conversations about what's happening online,
Yes.
and then you grow from there, and you start to pull back as they're older teens. And, now that I've got a 16 and an 18-year-old, and, we tried to do this really carefully and step through this. And we're at the place now that we've had so many conversations that I feel like they're equipped. They know what to do if somebody, they don't know is approaching them in inappropriate ways online. I feel like they know what to do if they spot some cyberbullying online. So, this is a this
Yeah.
it's a process that happens over time. So try not to feel overwhelmed as a parent. Take it slow, take it thoughtfully, make sure you've had a lot of family conversations all along the way. And, it can work out to be a real positive for kids too. So I don't want to say this is all bad and dark. It can be real positive, but I think we just have to step through it carefully, you know, side by side with our kids, and have just some real honest conversations that, the guardrails are not yet in place on these tools for kids. So we're going to work through this as a family as best as we can to make sure we're keeping you safe and we're helping you develop safe and healthy habits.
I love the fact you talked about boundaries because, like, not only family boundaries, but it's like as parents, I think we have to model those boundaries and those healthy
Yes.
habits. And if it's not starting with you, whether it's with your technology or your nutrition or how you move your body, then how do we expect our kids to follow the exact same types of healthy patterns and what we want them to do if we're not doing it ourselves?
Yes, and this is
What?
where you can start the conversation. It's just a family tech agreement that everybody's like, "Yeah, how do we as a family want to do this?" And then, we have to do our part. So that's a great way to begin the conversations. Like, where are the spaces in our house that we don't have technology? What time do we put our devices away? So there's great samples online. So start with that and really make it work for your family. And these tech agreements are constantly evolving. So, what we start with is not what we're going to be doing in 5 years, but it just keeps that
Yeah.
conversation going. So we as families are really aware of our habits and are using technologies in the ways that we want to, and in a way that's helping our family connect, as a family, and stay close and keep talking about these things.
I like that connection
Yeah.
word. It's like we've lost so much connection. So, what is your
Mhm.
friendship pyramid? I think that's very interesting.
So the friendship pyramid was a tool that I used when I was working with kids in my friendship program. And what it does is
Okay.
it helps kids and families and parents to understand kind of the lay of the land when it comes to social relationships. And it doesn't just apply to kids. So picture this in your head. So just the shape of a pyramid. At the very tippy top are our close friends, and so that just reminds us that, yeah, these are really special friendships that we have, but they're harder to find. So one of the descriptors of close friends is, harder to find. And we might just have one or two or a few of these. We might even go through a
Mhm.
period where we don't have that. And I've found working with kids, there's often a phase in kids' lives where they feel like, I don't have that, but I'm looking around and I'm seeing all these other people seem to have a BFF except for me. But, by just introducing
Mhm.
that sometimes it happens where we might not have a close friend, and there's things we
Yeah.
can do there to cultivate those relationships. But just letting kids know that close friends are hard to find. That's a really normal phenomena, that these friendships take longer to develop. They feel really trusting and they feel safe
Mhm.
emotionally. But we just have maybe one or two, and our family, can feel like that too. They can fill the void if we don't have a close friend. Underneath that, a
Yeah.
huge swath of the pyramid is what I call friends. And I'm very loose with this term, especially since we were just talking
Okay.
about online. For me, these friends are far from perfect. No relationship is perfect, but these are neighbors and their teammates and their classmates and their people that we see, that are
Okay.
in our life. And, we feel like, hey, this is a friend, but it's not at all, what we, consider a close friend. But all those
Close.
friendships are really important, because they add value to our day. They keep life interesting. So they are really important, and you never know. Some of those friends might work into close friends some days. You just never know.
Yeah.
And then at the base of that is acquaintances. So this is where I like to talk to kids about staying open to new friendships. So there are all sorts of kids out there that they might not know well. They might see them at school. They might not know them, but you never know. So running up and down the side of the pyramid is change. So I like to normalize that friendships change over time. That's one of my friendships truths. You can have a close friend, something could happen or could be a different phase of life or there could be a falling out and that close friend actually goes back to being an acquaintance and that feels really weird and that feels really uncomfortable, but that is a friendship truth. It happens throughout life. So helping kids know
Yes.
that happens, it's not uncomfortable, but it's okay. So even in elementary school, the fact that kids might be placed in different classes might cause a shift in that friendship, which doesn't feel great, but letting kids know that that's okay, but we never know the end of that story. The next year, that friendship
Right.
might grow back into a friendship again. So keeping our kids open to change, helping them avoid that there's something wrong with them, that friendships do
Yes.
ebb and flow. Stay open to those changes, and just to keep your eye out for close friends and for friends. Stay always open to friendships.
That applies very much into adulthood.
Yes,
And
doesn't it?
I it does, because we think just not only as kids, but it's like as we get older, we go through so many different phases of life, and being able to actually acknowledge that that person just may not be in the same phase of life that you're in right now, and it's okay that that friendship is no longer close, or that you don't have certain things in common anymore, and to let it go. I think
Yeah,
that, like I said,
yeah.
applies from becoming a mom and schedules looking very different to having, even possibly, I've seen this happen so many times with health goals, when somebody begins to prioritize their health and they hung out with people that were all about fast food and happy hour and late nights, and they're like, okay, that no longer aligns with where you're at, where you're going. And it's okay that
Yeah.
that changes.
It is, and it feels weird, but it's just normal. It's just how it goes. And so
Yeah,
knowing that's actually normal and okay makes it a little easier to digest. But then
it
separate from
does.
the pyramid, I have one little segment that's called the NRFs, which is not really friends. That's in the title of my book.
Okay.
And I do like to just point out sometimes we have people in our lives that feel like not really a friend, and so I point out what some of those qualities are. These friends might make you feel bad about being yourself. You might feel really unsafe, emotionally, especially. They might be mean to you sometimes and nice other times. So it's a really confusing
Mhm.
friendship. So I wanted to avoid, you know, mean girls or bullies. I just wanted to put a name on that was, this is actually not feeling like a friendship. This is a not really friend
Yes.
situation. But, because we're talking about kids and there's so many skills that go into friendships, I want to make sure that we are giving everybody the opportunity to grow and change. So even somebody that might be behaving like an NRF, a not really friend, over time that'll change. We're all learning and growing. We're all learning friendship skills. We all have strengths and weaknesses. So right near that
Yes.
NRF, the descriptor is, be kind but cautious. Know that maybe this isn't the safest friendship that we have, but be kind and cautious because everybody is still learning these skills and growing, especially when we're talking about
Yes.
kids.
Yes. That it reminded me of a couple different things, because I'm like, I think being cautious and being kind is so important, because like we are giving people space to learn and to grow, but that doesn't mean that you have to be their best friend if they're not nice to you. Like it's okay to have some
Yeah.
distance there. And this reminded me of, so when I did some women's therapy groups, and even talking about people being like emotionally cruel, emotionally, just wanting to damage that person, by being not so nice. And I don't know if you've ever seen it. It reminds me, I said, a kid movie. It was a perfect example of it, of the movie Tangled.
Oh,
And
yes.
there is the mom, the stepmom figure that comes in, that takes the little girl in, and she'll like pull her close, and then she says something really mean. And she'll pull her close, and then she says something really mean. And being able to recognize kind of those patterns and those relationships, that's not necessarily the healthiest relationship. Those
Yes.
close friends, those friendships aren't pulling you in than to break you down.
Yes, and that's I love that example because that's a great conversation starter with your kids. So say you're watching that movie and you just point that out, say, "Hey, look at
Yep.
this relationship. How do you think that feels being in that relationship?" And I always like to arm kids with a few phrases to help them
Okay.
navigate these things. So something in their back pocket. So say they have a friend that's doing that or they're in, some sort of play group, they can have a few phrases that might be like, "Hey, I'm going to go take a break and do something else right now." Or, "Hey, I feel really left out, and I'm going to, do this instead." Or, so just a few really simple one sentence phrases, something that they're comfortable with. I want to make sure we're not
Mhm.
putting words in their mouth that don't feel like, it's a good fit for them, but a few phrases to help them, navigate these situations, which come
Yeah.
up a lot. What I did learn in my research is, these situations happen often, especially when we hit the elementary and middle school years. And
Yep.
I often say, what's causing it is a lack of skills, maybe a lack of stability sometimes with kids and what's going on in their personal lives and at home. So it makes
Mhm.
sense that this happens, that social struggles and social strife happens, because we're talking about young
Yep.
people and there's a lot going on in their lives and they're all doing the best
Yes.
they can with the skills they've got. But of course, mistakes and misunderstandings happen. So we can help our kids know how to navigate those situations when they come up, just so they don't feel completely stuck. They know that they can set a boundary
Yes.
and maybe change how things are happening.
That is wonderful because it's reminding me of things that I work with even adults and parents on is being able to have tools, being able to have a skill set, those phrases to give yourself some distance and some time to ask yourself, what do you want? What do you need? And even kids being able to have that skill set of, I think I'm going to take a break is so important. It sounds so simple, but for kids to actually be able to say that and acknowledge that this is getting into a level of like unhealthy for them or they're feeling some type of way is so significant. I'm like, I
Oh,
can
it
feel like
is.
you just like hit something so important right here. It's like it's for them to be able to say that and know what that means. And even a parent, it's like you can model that.
Yeah.
If your kids are pushing you to the limit, like it's okay to call a timeout and say, I'm going to take a break right now and I'm going to go outside and go for a walk and I'll be back in 5 minutes.
Yeah. And
So that way
it's
you, yeah.
it's such a, I mean, at the deepest level, what we're teaching is this
Hmm.
balance, this fine balance of taking care of myself while being kind to others. And that is hard to
Yes.
do, even as adults. Like, how do we make sure we're taking care of ourselves, but also, being kind to others in the world? And that's a tricky dance that takes a long time to learn. But by
Yeah.
letting kids know that, hey, in situations like this, it's really important to take care of yourself. Your needs matter too. So what can we do
Hmm.
to make sure that, in these situations that you are taking care of yourself, but you're also being kind and respectful to this other person? So that's some language we can
Yeah.
introduce over and over again just to remind our kids that
Yes.
their needs are important too in these situations and they play a role. They play a role in setting boundaries.
Yeah. I feel like our conversation is all about, it's like friendships and healthy relationships, but it starts with having a kindness to yourself and a healthy relationship with yourself so that way you can have healthy relationships with others.
So true. And and communicating is hard even for adults. So it makes sense that to find the right words or know what to do or say, when we're kids is really hard. So of course things are hard and
Yeah.
messy because these things are hard as adults. So just giving,
Yeah.
our kids grace, giving other kids grace. I found now that my kids are, are young adults, what was most helpful to them when I was guiding through this is just to help them build the skills and awareness. I need to step away from, trying to change other kids or making assumptions about other kids. My best role as a parent and a caregiver is to try to help my kids you develop the skills, so when they are no longer, in my house, they got a good foundation, a good skill set, and also good social awareness. Just being aware of what's happening socially, being aware of themselves. That's the best thing I could do rather than getting in and trying to problem solve or trying to fix things. That
Yes.
never worked out well. So just
Yep.
stepping back and kind of reassessing. What can I do to help my kid build skills and confidence in this situation? And it often takes time, so if I have a child who has a really hard time speaking up, knowing that's not going to happen overnight, that there may be a
Mhm.
long time before they actually get the courage to say, what they'd like to say in that moment. So again, giving grace, giving space, just doing the best I can in the most loving, gentle way to encourage them to build these skills over time.
With your books, is this something that you want parents to read and be able to share with their kids? Is it something more geared towards kids to be able to read to develop more skills? Like, what's kind of the best way to approach that? And are they, and is each book different?
Yeah, each book is different. The
Okay.
first book, BFF or NRF, Not Really Friends, actually, they're all written for kids, but each,
Okay.
addresses a very different thing. They're all written for kids. The age range that I was writing for was middle grade. So the preteen years, anywhere from like 8 up to like 13 is really the
Okay.
audience that I'm writing for, because I find that's an area of life where there is a lot of change going on socially and developmentally
Mhm.
for kids. So I wanted to really talk to those kids about what's going on in their lives, and the stories in those books all grew out of my work with kids. So kids do find them really relatable, like, oh yeah, that happens to me, or that happens at my school
That's
too.
great.
But I always encourage parents, if they can, to read it too, because there's great conversation starters in there, and tools like the friendship pyramid or the friendship truths. They are tools that families could keep going back to. So it provides a little bit of a common language, even NRF. So, a parent can, if they know, okay, what is an NRF, that they can later reference, oh, it sounds like you might be in an NRF situation here. So the books
Yeah.
do give a framework for
And they
kids and
love
families.
acronyms.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So, it does, if parents have time, I encourage them to read it too, because it offers great conversation and a framework for them to guide them through all these years as they're navigating all the ups and downs that just naturally happen, when we're preteens and early teens.
I love that you said it's like we need to have the exact same skill set and that common language to be able to have those conversations. So I'm like,
Mhm.
for parents, yes, we're busy, but if this is something you actually really want to teach your kids, you make the time, just like with anything else that's important. So this I feel like is
Yes.
so important. Where
What I
can
find too, what I
yeah,
find some I'm sorry to interrupt you, that sometimes,
no,
when
you're
the
fine.
moms read it too, they're like, "Oh, it's helpful to them too." So don't feel like this is actually
Good.
just for the content is actually, it applies throughout life. So the parents that end up reading it too are like, "Oh yeah, this was actually the perfect time for me to read this book for what's happening in my own life too." So yeah, that's just throwing that out there. Sometimes it could be helpful for parents too. And the phone book is really
Yes.
helpful for families, because it does bring up all these conversations we want to have with our kids. So it goes into, cyberbullying and stranger danger and FOMO, social media.
Okay.
So it does. I wanted to talk about all the hard stuff, because as parents, it's hard to know all the things we should be talking about when we're handing, a device to our kids. So that book really navigates a
Yes.
lot of those discussions that go into owning a device that's connected to the internet.
I can't even imagine. Like, so when I get there, it's like I have parents that I worked with, I have teens that I've worked with, and it's just there's so much to navigate
Yeah.
now. And I have little ones that are already YouTube happy, clicking on everything. And I'm like, how are you not even two and you know how to navigate YouTube and skip ads and the craziest of things? It really does blow my mind. So
It is
where
amazing.
can we connect with you? Where can we find your books?
Yeah, the books, my books are available anywhere books are sold. And the easiest place to
Okay.
connect with me is my website, which is Jessica Spear, SPEER.com. And that has links to all my socials. So we can connect on social media. Feel free to send questions my way. I do have a monthly
Great.
e-newsletter that I share. It's free, that I dive into these topics, on a regular basis because it is my passion. So you're welcome to look at that. I have a lot of articles and information and resources on my website too. So at jessicaspear.com, and don't hesitate to reach out and ask questions.
That is great. This has been a great conversation. I'm going to link that in the description for everybody. I'm going to also link the books that they can find them on Amazon. You said where books are sold, so I'm going to link those to Amazon so they can be able to find
Great.
that. I'm like, it's the easiest thing ever, right? I'm like,
Yes.
have them just send it right to your door.
Sure.
And
Absolutely.
yes, this has been awesome conversation. I appreciate you being with me today.
Well, thanks for hosting me, Sasha, and for all the work you do supporting parents. I mean, these days it does take a community. We all need to be helping and listening and supporting each other as we navigate this amazing journey of raising children.
Yes, thank you so much.